chapter 8 called Television the Game. And we can start with either a summary or Micah can read the first and last sentence of the chapter. Whichever is more convenient for y'all.
The first and last.
Summary, that's new.
Oh, yeah.
Add some features to our videos.
We're trying to shake it up here. Very end.
That's true.
Do either of y'all have a summary?
I can bring one up. I can just say one about the chapter. It won't be really cohesive, but...
Why don't we just do both? We'll do both.
Okay. I guess really simply the chapter is about television and how it pulls people in to interact, and not only television itself, of course, but just the aspect of entertainment and the interactivity of everything and how it spikes recently into, not just recently, I mean like from the 1940s and 50s to now, of course, it has shown a large spike in like that people expect to participate in what they're interested in and in the media. So, and Micah, go ahead with the first one.
That was really good.
Thank you.
Cohesive.
So first line. Anybody want to work for the Dunder Mifflin Paper Company? That's the first line. And then you can't hear my mouse scrolling, can you?
No, it's not bad.
I can hear, but it's not like the other one. It's not as creepy.
Okay. Last line. As one of them had remarked in a message board comment to Farrington the previous spring, when it was still far from clear whether Chuck would be renewed. Anyway, this is kind of fun. That was kind of confusing, but it was about Chuck.
That is, but I think, yeah, it was a part of a quote and they were talking to someone about that whole thing. I guess to kind of add on to the summary, something I didn't mention was that the power of the web extends TV experiences and builds those communities of engagement and interaction. And through like web shows and stuff, it blurs the lines between video games and TV to offer a new way to expand the narrative.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think, and I love that you brought up the first sentence was Dunder Mifflin, because that was a perfect example of getting people involved. So unless you guys have anything else to add, we can move on to the question of the chapter.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that I feel like every single chapter that we've had in this book has always been about like blurring the line between like the audience, and, like the internet, and like all this stuff. And so, not that it's like being repetitive, but it's like really honing in on like the idea that like there's more to a TV show. Like if you put it online, it like has this whole other environment. And it's like that balance between like losing control as a creator and like giving it to the audience and stuff. And so I think that's like really important to note, is that like all of the chapters that we've had have been about that.
I agree. And I didn't notice that. So thanks for pointing that out, because something I've noticed is like, the topic of novelty, but that topic is also really important because I think it highlights the potential of the media space and like how people get involved and engaged.
Yeah.
So that's really good food for thought.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was actually going to say, like chapter 8 was very similar to the first chapter and how they explained the whole, like turning the show into a game. Or then it was the Dark Knight.
Yeah. It definitely, it ties back, which I love you brought up, because I didn't even think about it. But it does tie back. And Micah brought up how it ties back to the Joker thing. So, you're right, full circle. But thank you, Kayla. And in that case, the first question, or the question of the chapter is, why do you think this chapter was titled The Game, or Television the Game? And what did you learn about the audience in this chapter?
I guess I can go first. To me, I know they talked a lot about like TV game shows and like stuff like that. take like a very literal sense with like the game and TV, and that could be what they're referring to. But I immediately thought of it as like the point of the title is like, in order to create and maintain a successful TV show, like you have to play the game between like balancing what you think the audience wants and then like what the audience eventually tells you what they want and what they show interest in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like kind of this like push and pull of like, should I stick as a creator, should I stick to what I wanted to focus on, like the plot, the direction of the show, or should I like give in to like the little quote unquote stuff, like he talked about, all the extra stuff is the things that the audience are involved in. Mm-hmm. Should I like steer the show more towards what they're clearly interested in, or should I maintain and preserve like the original direction of the show? And so that's kind of what I imagine like the game being. It's just like the whole like dilemma between like giving up control and all that stuff. That's what I thought.
So I like that approach. I think it's something that is not, or it's not something I thought of at first. And I think that also answers the question of what did you learn about the audience in this chapter? I think you knocked two birds out with one stone, because you're basically saying that the audience expects more control now, which is 100% true.
Yeah.
I can say my response. So kind of building off what you said, because I love how your idea is a little bit different than mine of what the game is. Pulling from a quote of the chapter, I put, quote unquote, "It's all about using the power of the web to extend TV experience and build communities and a level of engagement like nothing else out there." So I put, with TV's losing viewers to like the web and the rise of web shows and content that are heavily influenced by video games, blah, 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 it's blurring that line between a video game and TV, which offers a new way to engage the audience. So my definition is kind of like a literal game, like it's blurring actual video games with TV, which is why I'm saying it's like TV the game.
Yeah.
So my question, sorry, what was that?
I just said that makes sense.
Yeah. So my question didn't answer the other one, which is, what did you learn about the audience? I put that the audience is no longer passive, and they're willing to get involved. So it's not like they get involved just because they're willing to get involved, and they're constantly finding a way to engage themselves within the story. So whether that be like fan accounts or diving deep into like personal spaces, like that Dunder Mifflin example where they could like make their own desk or something.
Yeah.
And interact.
Yeah. And like all of that, because I know in the mentioned that like it's because the show is really good, and like the way to judge the quality of content is to determine like if the audience is interested in like the stuff, like the side things that aren't the main characters, it's not the main plot, but if they're like showing effort and they're willing to like be engaged with like the small plots and like everything that comes with it, even if it's like the media content attached to a show, then that's how you know like the show is successful. And it's I think more now so than like ever before, that's really true, because like the audience does want to be really interactive. And so kind of at this point, if your audience isn't interacting with you, like besides just the regular like viewer numbers and stuff, then that kind of says a little bit about the quality of your show. And so yeah, I think you're right by saying that they like want to be more active participants now.
Yeah, and you said now more than ever, which I completely agree with. And through that, they also search for like the means of collaboration or just interaction with people who have the same interests as them.
Yeah.
Micah, do you have, sorry, we kind of were like, we're back, past the baton back and forth. Do you have something?
I love the energy.
Thank you. Do you have something you want to add?
I mean, going back to the chapter question, I think the reason this is titled, or one of the reasons this is titled The Game, is because as they described somewhere, I think like near the middle of the chapter, people, if the company doesn't create all of those extra little like sub stories and transmedia, all that stuff for people to invest themselves in and take ownership of the story, then people will just create it themselves. Just like they talked about how people started creating what was the platform they were on? Was it like Facebook or something? All the groups
Ooh.
for.
See, I was just about to say I don't remember the specifics, but I do remember them using the word anarchy in one of the previous chapters.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that that really ties to what you're saying. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
sorry, I
that's
can't
good.
remember the platform. I think it might have been Facebook or
Yeah, something like that.
something. Yeah.
Um, yeah, anarchy is actually a really good topic to bring out because when you think about it, they went over a lot of how um, like there's this government going on with the way our media is created, and you've got this shift in power between the consumer and the creator. But as we saw in like the subway example later on, uh, the consumer had to go straight to the advertiser because they're the people who really have the authority in this situation.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think as a perfect way to wrap up that question, it's that control that Kayla talked about. It's hard to place now, and it's complex for sure.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that's a great answer to that first question. And
Wait, I have a question to backtrack or to jump off of what you just said about like how it's a lot more like confusing, the balance between like giving up control and stuff. Do you
yeah,
think that that's necessarily like better for a creator? Like, do you think that that's more beneficial to like creation now than when it was like before when the audience didn't really have control? Like, is that a benefit?
so personally,
Mm-hmm.
of course, I think this is based all on personal opinion because I think creators are like, I hate you, audience. But I think because back then, like in the Mad Men times, they it's a lot of generalizability,
Mm-hmm.
generalizing your audience group, and I'm sure that those men felt like superior because they're like we control like the crowd with the advertisements that we're putting out. So I'm 100%. Oh my god, I'm 100% sure that. Whoa, that was so weird. I like felt my like tongue like curl. Okay, so I'm 100% sure that it was simpler at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I mean by complexity because I feel like nowadays creators are kind of like oh I have to integrate the audience. But to answer your question, if that's better for them, I think, of course, some people, maybe the traditional companies are like, want to stay with that tradition and maybe not so willing to be open to new ways. But I think a lot of new creatives are having a lot of fun in the space. Like
Yeah.
one of the examples I'll talk about later on is Bernie Sue, but we all watched that video, right? Or we will watch that video in case we haven't yet. But he has a lot of fun with it, like he kind of what's the word, um like some people are just willing to really expand out to the audience, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
they're like adaptable.
Yeah, and they're looking forward to what they can create in that space. So I
Yeah.
think it depends on the person,
Yeah.
but that's a great question.
Sorry,
That's,
Kayla, what was the question?
So, like how we were saying how it's like complex now because like an
Mhm.
audience will very much call you out like if they don't like the direction that you're taking with the show and they're not like just sitting back and being like passive viewers, like they
Mhm.
have an active role in like the success or like downfall of a show. Do you think
Right.
that that could necessarily be a benefit as a creator now, or do you think it was like kind of easier to find success like in more traditional terms of being a creator, like before the audience was so involved?
Mm. I think just like Jackie said, like back in the day when they used to create like mass media broadcasting to a wide audience, it all had to do with the technology they were using. Because when we just discovered broadcasting, you thought you had to appeal to everyone. But now that we have the internet and all these social networks and all these different ways of hyperlinking and how that has changed, I think it can be more confusing for the creator, but it's also better for indie developers. I don't know what like the film or advertising equivalent of an indie developer would be called, but you're not under the control of your studio anymore. Now it's more about what do you think your specific audience wants to see, and that's great for advertisers too because it's you can dive more into those niche groups.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, Micah just brought up an amazing point. So in fact, to build off of what Micah's saying, I think it's even more rewarding.
That's true.
Because like mass media is great because you build like pop culture that way, but within niche audiences, you can really build like a loyal and like crazy fan base that's like, even if it's just like 10 people, it's like enough to maybe
Start a riot at Subway.
Yeah, and or profit, even create a profit. So yeah, I that's a great question, Kayla. I think basically that's one that can count as a question for the next portion, which is how we need to engage the audience today, because I think that's great.
Yeah, I think Netflix is based on that entire idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. And like how Netflix has like their own content now. They used to not, and they created their own content now.
Mm-hmm.
That's an amazing question. And I have I have another question that isn't as strong, but it is about how we need to engage the audience today. So unless I'm cutting one of you off, do you guys have anything else to add?
Nope.
Go for it.
Awesome. So so there was a part in the chapter where it mentioned how web shows are considered to be quote unquote short attention span theaters. I was curious if you guys see this label as a compliment or a negative connotation, and if our attention span will continue to get shorter. Because if so, how do you think we need to engage the audience then? So let's start with the first half of that question, because I know I kind of just dumped it all on y'all. So it's like, you guys see it as a compliment or
and they
negative?
have short attention span.
Yeah, because you know how everybody nowadays says that like our generation is like short attention span or whatever.
Well, I think
you got it.
Okay, I think that section of the chapter, I think that was just speculation. Like, I don't remember them actually saying that we had short attention spans, but that people were discussing how that might be the direction our generation is going in, or future generations are going in.
Yeah, so let me cut in real quick. So you're completely right. They didn't say like we have short attention spans. I think they labeled web shows as short attention span theaters. Yeah. So thank you for clearing that up, Micah, because you're completely right. So on my part, the question's worded kind of strangely, but I am curious if you guys think like that term is kind of shows, yeah. Okay, sorry, continue.
I think it's kind of accurate, but like when I'm looking at a YouTube video, it depends on what I came to YouTube for at that specific time. You know, if I'm going to see a specific creator that I like watching, I'm going to stay there from the beginning to the end of the That's a Wasp. From the beginning to the end of the video, and I'm going to remember every detail, like my attention span is completely there. But if I'm just like browsing through, looking at my recommended, a cat jumping on a trampoline, I might stay there for a few seconds to see how cute it is and then I jump off. So I think that would be a like hyper generalization of the platform as a whole.
Yeah. I think definitely it is true, like we do have more of like a shorter attention span, just like in the way that the nature of like web series are like made. Like that's kind of the point. It plays off of that. Like there's not really like 2-hour long web series. Like that's not really the point of it. But I think with that, like it poses like a lot of benefits, like as a creator and like on the audience side, because the more that you're able to like jump through content, it just like enhances your like ability to see more content and to be like exposed to more content, because like when I'm watching, let's say like a movie, and I have to be like invested in the whole entire movie for like 2 hours, and then afterwards it kind of like diminishes like the need to go want to watch like another one, because you just focus like for so long on this one piece of content. But in terms of like a YouTube video, like Micah was saying, like my mind still has the ability to like watch 50 in a row if I want to, and it's fine. And I think that really helps like the amount of content that people are able to see, and that's really beneficial for like new creators and like creators who just want to make something like from their room or whatever. Like it really opens up like the space for people to get their content out there and for it to actually be seen, because we're not like trying to have everybody sit down and like watch this for an hour, and then that kind of takes away from like the possibility for you to be exposed to other things. And so I think it's true, but it's like it could be a really good thing that we have a short attention span.
Yeah, so you just made really good points, and of course, building off of Micah's thoughts. So you brought up how like they're made for that. Like, web shows are made for that. Like I did that. That didn't cross my mind because I just didn't think about it. But web shows are indeed made for like short attention span. It's not like they're going for like a cinematic masterpiece. And another good point you brought up was that oh gosh. Another great point that you brought up was the fact that movies, after watching a movie, like you're not really jumping to watch another one unless you're binge watching. Yeah, unless you're binge watching, because if you watch like one movie, you're not exactly like, oh, let's watch this other genre, this other movie now, because why not? Some people might, but like usually in the aspect of time, not really. So in that case, I want to ask y'all the second half of my question, which kind of ties into what Kayla is saying, because she says that web shows are kind of made for that. So my question is, do you think our attention span will get shorter? And then if so, how will we engage the audience then? So if web shows are already considered like media for short attention spans, if it were to get shorter, what's the next step? I guess that's a hard question.
Well, I remember being in like elementary school or something, and they would say the average adult attention span in the US is about 6 seconds long. If you don't catch them within that first 6 seconds, they're gone. And it has been cut down to like half that since elementary school. So I think it's definitely getting shorter, but I also think there's a certain limit at which it just can't get any shorter, or else we'd all be bouncing off the walls. I think history moves in a cycle, and once we reach that point at which it's like at its lowest, it's just going to go back up. Our attention spans are going to grow again. I don't know what is going to cause that, but
yeah,
we
You're
go
right.
back and forth.
I think often we go into like really crazy innovation and we always end up taking a step back. Because people are like, hey, remember like the good old days when it was just this? So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, and I also think that like it's very true. I don't see us like having shorter content out there, because like Micah said, we would just all be like flipping through and everything would kind of be meaningless at that point if everything's like 1 minute. But I think like the industry is moving, and obviously we're gonna like evolve and like change content and the format and everything. But I think it's not gonna get shorter, but we're just gonna find different ways to implement things in the time space that we already have right now to keep the attention. So I don't think we're necessarily going to shorten it to fit our attention span, but like implement things that are going to hold it more. You know what I mean? Because I don't see us making like shorter YouTube things or like web series and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if it were to go anywhere, it would probably just have to be off of like a new tech. You know, like just probably like AR, VR. Extended reality.
Yeah, that's an interesting argument. Sorry, did I cut you off?
No. I'm just saying, like, to answer your like question another way, if we were to engage the audience, it would be through those emerging tech.
Right, definitely. And Kayla, that's an interesting argument because You say like we'll find ways to fit more things into that allotted time, and um, it makes me think of like advertisements, pop-up ads, all these different things that we see going on our screen while we're trying to enjoy like a YouTube video, and we tend to tune out the things we don't want to see and just focus on the main content. Um, so I'm wondering how we're going to ever fit so many things into a single piece without. Well, I suppose you could watch the video multiple times, enjoy every different element. I don't know. It's an interesting question.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely complex, and I'm sure there's not a straight answer because we're not like shamans, so we don't know for sure what will happen. But it's interesting to think about because
Mhm.
we go on YouTube a lot, and I'm like, then what's the next step if we're already considered a really short attention span?
Yeah, we already had Vine.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Good old 6 seconds.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to the question. Not the question, the examples.
Alrighty. So, brainstorm a current immersive example, reps the theme of the chapter. You guys have an example? I have a really quick one that I just want to kind of wiggle in there. So, it's the Bernie Sue example, which is why I said I'd be talking about it later. So, I'll just read the little paragraph that I wrote because we watched the video, and also for the experimental storytelling class, we watched another video that he was in. So I just put 2018 to present, Twitch live and interactive sci-fi drama artificial. Bernie Sue, he talked about how this interactive show on Twitch allows for multiple users to make canonical choices for the characters in real time. It relates to the chapter because it's a good example of a web show, and that is similar to a video game that builds communities online and has extraordinary engagement. And he mentioned how it's all about giving the audience control, but the writers still have the reins. So he talked about this in the storytelling class, the video we watched there. He talked about how, although it's all about giving the audience control, the writers still have the reins. They have everything scripted. They know the general direction that they want the story to go. So it's kind of like you see that balance between audience and creator. Like they hypothesize what the audience will ask for, and they have everything scripted and everything prepared beforehand. So I think that's just like all encompassing.
Yeah, I think it's a really good example.
Yeah.
I was going to mention the artificial necks thing. Also about like how they're implementing like the AI to kind of filter through like the comments and submissions to like ensure like the quality of the content being sent is still good, because I think that that's where a lot of like shows and stuff, they can kind of fall flat with that, is that like sometimes the audience just like tells you they want your show to be taken in one direction like as a joke type of thing, and it ends up just like totally killing the story. And so I think now that they're using like technology to kind of filter through that and like preserve the quality is a really big like step towards like having better content and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think you really wrapped that up really nicely. Micah, any comments or different examples?
Different examples? Okay, outside of film, I can think of this whole situation with the Travis Scott McDonald's collaboration. And I think it's pretty cool how he's allowing fans to like go to McDonald's, order their thing, and post these little stories and snippets online of like what happened when you did it. I remember reading one about how angry the McDonald's workers got when you would say you wanted the Travis Scott burger. So yeah, it's pretty great.
I think that is a great example that you could definitely put in that document.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
right,
feel like
the
I do that all the
document.
time because you guys come up with good stuff, and then I'm like, put it in the doc. Because I do think that it is a great immersive experience because people are going out there and buying that that generic burger.
Yeah. It doesn't even look good.
Not necessarily generic, I guess, but it is like one of their, isn't it already like a burger that they have just with bacon?
It's nothing
Yeah.
special. It's just what he gets when he goes to McDonald's.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think people go out to do it, to get it, and they listen to his music on the way there.
They did
And
the same thing. Duncan did the same thing shortly after the Travis Scott meal, but with Charlie D'Amelio. She's like a TikTok person.
yeah,
They like made a drink that like she orders. So it's called like the Charlie or whatever. And then they had like a song that they made, like they fully made a song and then they put it on TikTok. And like people would dance to the song like when they would order it. And so it was like this whole trend because they like made a piece of music just specifically for the order and like had that started trending and everything. And so, but like people really wanted to know what her order was because I guess like her whole thing was coffee bean, I don't know.
no,
But
that
they listened to like what her fan base wanted to see and then they kind of like made it a whole trend.
that's crazy that it was already like a trend thing, but they even built the trend off of that trend.
Yeah, they made a whole song for her order.
That's crazy.
Wild. Yeah,
Drop it in the doc.
I will.
Because that's a great example. In fact, for this next chapter, my example is actually TikTok. I love it's coming full circle, guys.
Well, I think we're done with this
Yeah.
chapter.
For sure. I think that was you guys just each gave amazing examples, and we are ready to move on to the next one. So we can cut real quick.
Okay.
Alrighty. So chapter 9 is called Twitter and Nothingness. Why don't we just read the first and last line of the chapter to start off? If that's okay with you, Micah.
Yeah, I just have to remember what
you're good,
page it's on. There it is. Okay. Twitter and Nothingness. Meet Noah Breyer. That's the first line. I'm going to keep going. It's not hard to do because in addition to his physical presence, Noah has a blog, a couple websites, a Facebook profile, a LinkedIn profile, a Flickr account for his photos, a YouTube channel for his videos, a SlideShare account for his business presentations, a Last.fm profile for, I think you guys get the point.
Yeah.
And then the last line, I believe that was, yep. Okay. Facebook was so obviously the way to go. It's kind of a marketer's dream. Stefan Andre told me, a note of wonder in his voice. But it's not marketing the way you normally think of it. People are seeking it out.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a few steps. Okay. I see these bullet points. I remember these bullet points when he talked about his brother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, the best way is to kind of jump into the question because I feel like it really explained this chapter well. The question is, with the current trend of technology and online social networks, are people quote unquote hyper connected, or are people alienating themselves due to distant physical social presence? So in my opinion, if I can jump in here real quick, I would say that we are hyperconnected, but I do feel that people alienate themselves as well. So I think it's a mix of both. I feel like all of these questions, they're questions because they have no finality to them. They're all just kind of, it's really just a mix of both, and it depends on it's either a mix of both or it depends on the person, or it's always one of the two. People aren't alienating themselves, but people are alienating themselves, but they are still hyper connected. So like some people, and of course some people aren't alienated at all. It depends on the person, but I know that personally, I feel like I am a bit more on the alienated side because I definitely am more active online, but and I know certain things about people that I feel like I wouldn't know if I didn't see it online. I'm sure we can all relate to that. And I think Yeah, I think it's in this way that people discover that relatability. That's what keeps them hyper-connected while being alienated, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. That's kind of what I said. Like, I wrote this down here, which is kind of what you were saying, but I just went off on like a little bit more of like a tangent thing. But I think we become hyper connected in the sense that we're like the most connected that we've ever been, obviously. And for a lot of people, there's just not that much that's out there that isn't like reachable, including people and like everything. And so everyone's sharing their lives like 24/7, and like they want to do that. And so that's like the hyper connectedness that we've like become in our society. But with that comes like a lot of need to be alienated, because like everything about everyone to the point where like it kind of makes you numb to like the need to want to know more. You know what I mean? Because it's like, oh my God, I have this social pressure to share everything, all the parts of my day, and like everyone wants to know how I'm doing. And so it's like you can kind of get really overwhelmed with that. And that will make you want to just like not share anything at all and like not want to be involved at all, because it's just like way too overwhelming. And so I definitely think that there are people who are alienating themselves, but also the fact that we're so connected is kind of forcing that upon people too.
Kayla is making great points today. And I definitely think that's true, because I think there's more obligation as well, but some people don't respond well to it.
Yeah, it's just too much.
Which may cause people to be more alienated. So yeah, I definitely see that the situation's tough, for sure.
Yeah. My thoughts on this are actually kind of both of y'all's, just in that I do feel like we're more connected as far as information and being able to hyperlink between experiences and thoughts with one another, but at the same time we have lost a need for kind of these real connections we have face to face. I think because I have so many friends online, I don't feel as much of a desire as I would have 10 years ago to go make friends in my neighborhood. I don't even know my neighbor's name, and that's just something that would have been unheard of back in the day.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's that chemistry, because when you meet someone and you immediately have chemistry and or you build that chemistry, it's different than building something online, which is usually kind of based on your interests. In person, sometimes you could just talk about literally how much you hate class or something else. It's a different kind of chemistry that can be built than online. So yeah, I see what you mean, Micah, and I think that's a great point. And if we're ready, we can move on to the question. Any questions? I have a question, if nobody wants to know.
You got it.
Okay, so I'm going to read a little snippet from the chapter. It says, there is a quote in the chapter that said, "Gossip is useful because it sets the bound of acceptable behavior, but also because it gives us the thrill of sharing pseudo-intimate details of other people's lives while expressing our disapproval." And then somewhere in that chapter, he said, "We tell stories to advance our goals, and sometimes we lie," which makes sense. So my question is, I didn't really agree with what he said, what the author said here. And I want to know y'all's standpoint on it, if you disagree, and why. Personally, just to kind of throw in why I didn't agree with it, is because I feel like that's a really traditional way of thinking. I do agree that gossip sets the bounds of acceptable behavior and gives the thrill of expressing our disapproval, but at the same time, I wouldn't say acceptable behavior. I mean, of course, that is reality. Reality is people do gossip whenever they're like shocked about something because it's not acceptable. But I just don't agree with it because I don't know. I feel like we're maybe working to fix that, and or gossip now is less about like well, gossip personally is still about this, but gossip online now is like hints or spoilers or stuff like that. So I wanted to know y'all's opinion on it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that like maybe like at its core, like the way that gossip kind of like has been that like if you see something that you don't necessarily like always see or like society doesn't deem it as normal, that's like kind of like makes your mind like kind of like your ears perk up and you're like, oh my God, I need to listen to that conversation somebody's having at the table right next to me, that type of thing. And then you like tell your friend. But I think definitely a big part of gossip, it's not because you like disapprove of what happened. It's just kind of like you have this need to tell somebody else something that like you know and they don't. It's like kind of that element to it. It's like, I know you don't know this information, but like I want to be the one to tell you. And it's like kind of that weird thing where it's you just want to let other people know that you know something they don't type of thing. So it's like not necessarily, and not in a bad way. Like it could just be like a funny joke that they've never heard of, but you know it and you kind of just want to share it.
Yeah.
And so I think, especially on the internet, like a lot of it is just like, have you seen the show? And then if somebody says no, then it's kind of like your show now because you showed them or like you played that song for them now. So like that artist is kind of like yours and that's why you like gossip about it.
Yeah.
So I think there's like that element to it a lot. Not necessarily that you like disapprove of whatever happened. You just want to tell somebody who doesn't.
Yeah. So I clearly flubbed on what I meant, but you just explained it perfectly. So I didn't like that word disapproval and like acceptable. And I think you just explained that amazingly because it's not necessarily about disapproval, but it's more about like sharing. Of course it can be about disapproval, but it's about sharing like what you know, which I think is a much better way to put it. And Micah, I'm interested in knowing your standpoint as well.
Yeah, thanks for chiming me in. Kayla, I think you had a really good point there about how you just want people to know that you know something, because it ties right back into the chapter's thoughts on status and how anything that we do socially always comes back to us having that ego boost. And I kind of agreed with what they were saying about gossip, but not entirely. I don't think it's necessarily like just black and white. I want to tell somebody that I disapprove of something somebody else is doing, but I do think that the fact that I'm telling you this behind closed doors kind of implies that I have a certain feeling about what I'm saying. You know, it just brings that connotation. If I'm whispering something to you, you know how I feel about it, or else I'd just be saying it out loud.
Yeah.
Okay. Because Micah just literally gave an amazing. That was amazing because you just summed it up even better than I did. Because you're right, it's not all black and white, and just that connotation of I'm telling you this in secret is that ego boost. I know something that you don't.
Yeah.
Right.
There we go. We each just contributed amazing pieces to the question. Does anyone else have any other questions? I think that was a pretty good one.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
If not, we could always move on to the last thing. So are we all okay with that? Alrighty. So the brainstorm, I did mention this earlier, so I'm just going to drop it real fast. I'm sorry. I hope y'all don't mind. But the brainstorm of the immersive experience is the rise of TikTok. For me, I think I don't even need to explain this because people share their stories about travel, about their relationship, about eating habits, daily schedules, and it's just this giant information exchange that everybody is watching somebody talk about like their boyfriend or like their girlfriend, you know, and it's like, I don't even know you, but good for you, you know. It's exactly that. It's exactly Twitter, you know, like just visual. Like you're watching people go on trips and you're watching people make stuff in their air fryer and like this kind of stuff. So that's my example.
Am I the only person who feels like when you're scrolling through like Twitter and it shows you, it recommends tweets from people you don't know, you feel like it shouldn't be there? Like you don't care if you don't know that person?
So I can see how you would feel that because sometimes I do feel that, especially if the content is like nothing related to what I'm looking for. But sometimes I love seeing that stuff because it's so funny. Sometimes it's like they're
Mhm.
talking about similar things and it's just like it's an account that I don't follow, but they're making jokes about the same topic that I'm talking about or interested in. Um, but I can definitely see how sometimes it's like on Instagram when I'm like, why are they showing me this? You know,
Mhm.
like
Right.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I definitely see, yeah, like sometimes I feel that too, where it's like somebody's talking about a random thing and like I don't get the joke because they're referring to like a show I don't watch or like something that I have known nothing about. And I'm like, why is this even here? Who liked it in order for it to be on my feed? Like, it's just like kind of, yeah, it's kind of just like a waste of space on the timeline. Like it's just like an extra scroll. So I get that. But then I think it's also kind of like an appeal towards social media for a lot of people because like, for example, the TikTok example you just brought up, like the whole feed, unless you want to specifically watch just people you follow, like all of the content that you get on TikTok, it's all people that you don't know and that
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
don't follow. And so it's like all of that.
Mhm.
And that's like the only thing that you ever see on TikTok. And I personally like it on that platform
Mhm.
because like I don't always want to see like the 5-second videos that like people I know are doing. Like there's just so much more like funny things that I'm missing because I don't know those people that I
Yeah.
wouldn't see on Instagram and I wouldn't see on Twitter. But like on TikTok, I can see like basically everyone who's on the entire app. And it just like exposes me to a lot of different types of TikToks that I would have never normally be exposed to. So I think it's good on certain platforms.
So I forgot what you said. You said a word with A, like the letter A. You said Instagram or TikTok. You said awards that or attempts.
Oh, appeals to that.
Appeals. Okay, thank you. So I love that because I think appeals and I think that's also what they attempt to do. Like
Mhm.
those social media, you said it appeals to the social media platform. I think it also attempts to keep people social on
Yeah.
social media. You know, like it's like, hey, you like this content? What about this content? You know, it's like it's that network. But I can totally see because that isn't because I took a journalism class and they did talk about what you're talking about, Micah, which is that people do look for stuff that they want to see, right? Is that what you were saying? Like if it's not someone they follow or if it's like suggested, they don't really care. And that's why journalism is at risk of like having people be um what's that word? Whenever there's like cognitive dissonance, they just don't want to look at it. What there's
Yeah.
a word.
Associate it.
Whatever
Or
the word is, cognitive dissonance is like 10 times better, so keep going.
Okay, cool. So like it's just like they shut out information they don't want to hear. They
mhm.
so I know that's why it's a risk in journalism. But of course, you know, in social media, it's not that much of a risk because some people do like to just follow people that, or some people do just like to see things that from people they follow.
Mhm.
And some people like to explore. But I think, Kayla, you're right in that aspect, which is that there's certain apps for that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Like Instagram, I know some people are like, I don't want to see this because it's suggested. The algorithm is just suggesting it to me. But I think on apps like Vine and TikTok, like that's essential to that.
Yeah. Like for comedy based apps, I think it's essential because like when it's just like your friends, it's like kind of I don't know, it's like a different vibe.
Yeah.
But when it's like everybody else, it's just a lot more intriguing that way, I think, because you don't know the ins and out of whoever's life it is. You know, like I don't know everything about them, and so it like allows you to like appreciate the comedy more than you
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
be with that person.
Comedy is that universal mediator that
Yeah.
connects us all. I
Mhm.
could talk about this all day, but I know you have to go, Kayla.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's get on to. Are we on the last question?
That was it. That was it.
All right.
Unless anyone else has any more
Oh
examples.
yeah, unless there's another immersive example.
Immersive example for chapter 9.
Yeah, which was Twitter and Nothingness, which is basically what we talked about right now, is hyperconnectedness.
I have a quick example about like something that like encourages connectedness.
Yeah, go for it.
It's like Instagram stories and Snapchat stories, because before there was always like this type of like, you don't, yes, everybody wants to share everything, but you don't want to permanently share it like on your feed where it's there forever. And so that kind of like made people hesitate or like think twice or maybe wait a couple days before they posted something and shared something, because like it's going to be on your feed forever until you delete it or whatever. But now that there's stories, it goes away in 24 hours. And so it's like you don't even think twice about sharing something because you know it's not going to last and it doesn't really matter. And so there's so much more content out there on social media now that everything can disappear really quickly. Like there's not that thing like holding you back of like, oh my God, everyone's going to see this forever.
That's a great point.
And there's also that you aren't like punished for posting a story and it doesn't get like 3,000 likes or something like that. You can just post a story. Nobody knows the metrics of what's going on behind that.
Yeah.
It's that temporary aspect of it, which works a lot for, I would say, people of our generation. Because before then, you know, with just MySpace and or Facebook, you know, you post a picture of yourself drinking, like you get so much heat for it and or in trouble. So.
Yeah.
Did you hear Instagram was actually thinking about removing likes? You could still like content, but nobody would see it.
Wait, what is that?
That's the thing. That's already there.
What does that mean?
Is it?
Yeah. So before you used to see like under every single post, it was like 100 people liked this photo. And now it just says so and so, like the first 3 people that like the photo, that's who pops up underneath your photo. So it'll be like Micah, Kayla, and Jackie liked this photo. And nobody else can see how many people liked it unless that's your post. And
Really?
so like, yeah, and so you're the only one who can see the actual number.
I did not know that. Is that's already going on now?
It's been like that for this whole year.
Well, I see 11,150 likes on this meme I just pulled up. Is it like something you have to enable?
Yeah, so it's the update. So if you haven't updated your Instagram app, it's still there.
Interesting.
Okay, yeah. I did not know that.
It was part of their like mental health and like positivity online.
Very helpful.
Thing that they were doing, because it takes away the pressure of like needing to get likes and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's super cool.
I think it's
amazing. I didn't know that. So it's the temporary aspect is tempting, and the mental health, what did you just say? You just said the word. My bad, my memory.
Yeah, but it's okay. I know. Yeah.
So basically, okay. If there's nothing else to add, we can cut it.
Good job, guys.
Good job.